You guys are listening to Play by Pod, the podcast that lifts the headset and looks at the game changing elements of broadcasting across Australia, across all levels. On to this week's Game Changer highlight, and the Game Changer highlight is something we look at as a more of a learning curve for anyone that wants to improve their craft. And this week, we're going to talk about breaking down the basics of play-by-play calling for rugby union for a TV audience. Now, Marty, you've come through a long way. You've had a different upbringing in terms of broadcasting into what a lot of other people have had. For you, what are some of the basic fundamentals of when you put the headset on and the green lights on to calling a rugby union game for a TV audience?
I think a big one, especially with rugby union here in Australia, we have a lot of Pacific Island players in and around. I think for me, name pronunciations are huge. I've got a terrible last name that for years, thank you for saying it right, that for years has never been said right. So this one rings true with me that always, if you're going to do one thing, the first thing you should always do is make sure you can say everybody's name that's on that field, because you don't know, especially in this age of streaming and broadcast, who might be watching. A family member, a friend, it might reconnect them in some way. It might make them feel special. I think getting a name right, that is the first thing. And in the craziness that can be rugby union, that sometimes can be a very difficult thing to do. One famous thing that World Cup winning Wallaby and commentator Tim Horan taught me was the idea of letting it breathe. And that has a volume of pros for your broadcast. And rugby union, you said you were an AFL referee. We're very clued in with rugby union, the broadcast we do. Our refs have got mics, so he's essentially another commentator, but you won't get to hear him if you don't let the broadcast breathe. At home, you need to let other people breathe. You don't need to be talking at them. It's 80 minutes. You don't need to talk for all 80. Letting the game, the sounds of the game and the venue breathe and speak while you're not, I think is really important.
How do you control that when you're calling? Do you sort of have to listen more to the crowd effects to go, okay, well, what I'm saying now, I'll wrap it up and let that crowd sort of take the moment?
Well, I think it's twofold. If you've got it depends on how many people are working on your broadcast with you. Obviously, you have your director in your ear the entire time. You're hearing, what they're doing, where they're going with shots, what's happening. You have a little sneaky comm to them to be able to communicate, to be like, say, hey, what's going on here? Let's go to this, let's do that, and vice versa. So I think having a really good relationship and line of communication with your directors and your producers is super important, because they might tell you to say, oh, hold up for a second, or you might tell them, it's like, hey, stay with this person. This is where the shot's going to be. So I think, understanding your game. This would be another point. Understand your game, and when you watch enough of it, you'll start to see the blueprint for, oh, okay, something bad has just happened. I need to get ready to get myself out and frame this situation, because we're going to be going straight onto that referee who, in way better words and more precisely, is going to say exactly why what is about to happen is going to happen and why. So yeah, that comes back to also, so what are my three? Letting it breathe, know the names of your players, and it's that. I think that's probably that's what makes commentators understanding, like, what are the moments that you need to let speak for themselves in a game. Because I think all too often you can hear just things because sometimes people just glaze over things, and you'll watch back and go, did that actually happen? And they just didn't even notice it. So
how much preparation would you put in terms of the name? So you get the team sheets out, days out, or whatever time out from your game. You're not sure. Do you jump on the phone, or do you?
100%. 100%. I'm a serial caller.
Yep.
I sometimes probably am too much so, just because I just too much I feel can be lost in an email or a text. I prefer to speak to someone on the ground, speak to someone who's there, especially if you're remote. I think you need to do it. But then all of a sudden, once you have that conversation and you show them that you want to know about their players, their club, their team, you build a relationship. You need to build those relationships. And for me, moving from the completely on site for everything you do to you're completely remote, you are only as good as that prep you do. You don't have any extra ability to go and sniff out an extra fact 20 minutes before kickoff. You don't have that. So it's really leveled up my preparation game. And as soon as I can get a preliminary team list, I'm getting that one out. I've got my 4-year-old has better handwriting than me, so I have to. I have a very strict format in my run sheet in my sheets where if I can't fit everything for a team on one A4 sheet, it doesn't make the cut.
Yep.
So there's lots of little things that I have on my sheets that people will look at it and it'll just look like something out of the insane asylum. But for me, there's different patterns and flows on that sheet, which help me categorize and group things so that in the heat of the moment, I can whip out a nice little fact that might resonate with someone watching.
You see other commentators that they might have tens of lots of sheets of paper in front of them, but let's be honest, in the heat of the contest when you're calling, you don't have time to go through 10 sheets of paper to find.
No.
So if you've just got that A4 in front of you and you've got your system where you know how to find a particular part, that's where keeping it simple does really help.
Oh, yeah. KISS principle, 100%. Yeah. Oh, no, it is. And yeah, sometimes you don't get the opportunity to do as much as you would like to for prepping for games because that's just sometimes the nature of the beast. Like the game might fall into your lap late. But like I said, you do your best with the time that you've got. And I think you need to internally prioritize, okay, as a caller, what are the things that I need to button down and they need to be present in the call I'm about to do. And then just work your way down the line. I think you can very easily go, follow Alice and go down the rabbit hole. And then before you know it, you'll get, I've got to leave to go do my broadcast. Yeah. But I got completely distracted, and you'll get there and realize that those fundamental bits that you needed to have done, you might not have done. So I think it's always being relative as well about thinking wholly about what are the core things that you need to get done, and then and if that's the Sunday, and what are the sprinkles and the cherries that if you get time you can throw on at the top. But yeah, that's a really big one.
Just lastly, I'll touch on this one because you mentioned about having a producer. There'll be a lot of people who are calling rugby union or who want to call rugby union. They don't have a producer in their ear. You've had those games where you've probably had to take a little bit of directive. How do you find that in a certain moment of the game where you have to sort of take lead and lead the way that something happens in the game that requires addressing?
Oh, mate, I love it. I absolutely love it because I think if you go into a broadcast situation and you've got, I'm calling a game, and you just exist here and you call there without any regard for the people that might be also in that broadcast with you, there's only so much you can do on your own. But when you start to understand what it is for those people in those different roles, what is something that you can do that makes their life easier, and conversely, what is something you can do that makes their life harder? Never in the heat of the moment summon a replay. Never ask for a replay to be summoned, because if they haven't started moving on that maybe in the 30 or 40 seconds before, you've thrown them under the bus. So that's really important, that the more you can understand the roles of the people that work with you and work with them, and you together can really make some beautiful scenes and commentary, because they're seeing things and hearing things that you might not, and vice versa with yourself. So it's almost a bit of a hive mind and having the freedom. I'd be in trouble if I didn't give a shout out to my main man, Tom McClifty. Him and I have done a lot of work this season, but him and I, yeah, we
Best in the business, Tommy.
he is Tom's son, and him and I really enjoy the work we get to do together because we definitely get on really good wavelengths, like I do with all of the other guys. But yeah, and it's about, once again, build those relationships with the people you work with. It's not a one-man show. It's a whole team that comes together to do this. So if you are working with them, really, really understand what they're bringing to the table too, so you can do your best to accentuate that and not just yourself.